Mr. Scott Hughes, local political analyst. Hey, Mr. Scott, welcome back to KEEL. Thanks for taking time for us today.
Good morning, Robert and Erin.
Morning.
So let's see. Miss Ollie is officially in. We counted the official Shreveport mayoral candidates as of, what was it, six now?
Six, with Ken Kreff trying to get the signatures and Stephen Jackson still undecided.
Who do you think is still going to get in? And is there anybody who might jump into the race, Glover, who might be a last-minute surprise?
Well, at this point, I actually have 9 names.
Oh, boy, I'm missing some. Who am I missing?
So the names on my list, and I think some have officially announced, some have claimed they're running, some may get in, but my list would be obviously the incumbent, Ollie Tyler. Adrian Perkins has formally announced. You've mentioned Stephen Jackson. We're not sure if he is in yet or not. I'm told there was actually another announcement last night. Tremekius Dixon announced that he is running. Then you have Jim Talifero, who has announced. John Paul Young has said he's running on Facebook.
Yep.
Ray Smith has formally announced. Ken Kreff is telling everyone that he's running, and Lee Savage has announced.
Okay.
Let me start here. And maybe this should be the last question, but I'll ask it first. It was a bunch of years ago that Baton Rouge political analyst, pundit, writer, I think it was John McGinnis, who said, quote, Keith Hightower is Shreveport's last white mayor. Was he right?
I don't know that he's right. In the short term, I think he was right. We certainly were going to go through a cycle where we were going to elect African-American mayors. We've seen that pretty much in all of our municipal positions here in Shreveport, definitely. But if you follow politics, you see places like Atlanta where that happened, Andrew Jackson. But then you also see things cycle back. After a while, you get through that round of firsts, or that political newness, and things settle out. And so the question is, are we at a point now where we could see a white mayor reelected in Shreveport? I'm not sure this time it's in the cards necessarily, but you do see it on the horizon where you hope a point where race is not the factor in a race. It's a person's character. But in Louisiana, in Shreveport, it's often not more about race. You have a situation where the majority of African Americans in our county, our parish, are registered Democrats. So this also becomes a party situation when you have a Democrat run against what's often a Republican on the other side of the ballot.
Scott, they're going to attack the mayor on crime. That's going to be a top issue. What do you want? What do we need to hear from those other folks? You can't just go and throw mud at her. You got to bring something to the table, right?
You do, and I think the crime issue is going to swing both ways. I think the mayor has to tell us what she's been doing on crime and what she could do, and it's a fine line. What can she do different in 4 more years? Because she's sitting there now. She made some comments yesterday at her press conference, which were very good, but many are going to question, why don't you do that now? You're sitting in the mayor's seat. But on the other side, I think, yes, if you're going to run against the mayor and make crime the issue, you have to tell us that you're going to come in and do A, B, and C. You have a plan, and that plan can reduce crime. And that's going to be a heavy lift for anybody, because a lot of the crime that's happening is not necessarily crime that patrols can stop. It's crimes of passion. It seems to be drug-oriented. In some cases, it's retaliatory crime, and it seems to be very, very isolated.
Kind of wince at saying this out loud, is Alan Crump going to be Miss Ollie's Albatross?
I think crime's going to be her Albatross, and that's unfair. Any elected official gets hung around their neck, something that takes place. If you were Kathleen Blanco, it was Hurricane Katrina. What could you do? You tried. She was never going to overcome that. So for Ollie, yes, I think the crime issue is going to be her thing. She has stuck by the police chief, and some may say that's her undoing. At the same time, she's going to point to that she's loyal, that she's hired good people, she's tried to work a plan. At the end of the day, they tried to argue that crime is not at an all-time record high, but it's definitely spiking. But I think that in the end, social media is something that is really highlighting crime more today than it did 10 or 20 years ago.
Who makes the runoff if we go to the polls today? Which two are in the runoff?
It's hard to pick 2. I really like 3. I'll hedge my bets, but I really think that on the Republican side, or you could say the white side, I think Jim Talifero is going to be attractive to a lot of folks. He's a known name with Crime Stoppers. He's got law enforcement experience, so I think Jim Talifero could be a very early favorite for one of the spots. I do think Ollie would be a favorite for one of the spots. She is the incumbent mayor. I think she's going to have trouble Last time in 2014, she got 44% in the primary. I don't think she'll come near 44%. I think she'll be below 30 in the 20s. I think Adrian Perkins, the newcomer, if he makes the race, there's a question of residency that may be fought out in the courts with Adrian. But if assuming he can run, I think he will be a very viable candidate. And so those three may be really fighting for two spots. The next level down, you're going to have Lee Savage, I think, is going to run as a very conservative candidate. He'll be attractive to many in Shreveport. That might get him 15-20%. And then Stephen Jackson, if he runs, is another well-known name that with the Cedric Glover political patronage there, the machine, I think he could probably be very viable as well.
Let me ask you that. Was my next question. Stephen Jackson gets in the race even with an Adrian Perkins in the race. Do you see that happening?
I personally think Stephen's going to run. I haven't talked to Stephen. I think he's been acting like he's going to run. I think he's wanted to run. I think he has people behind him that are willing to support him if he runs. The key here is to understand this race. This is not a party primary system. This is a race where all 9, 10, 15 candidates, whatever it is, that get on the ballot will run. And so you're not looking at who can get 40, 50, 60% this first time. You're looking at who can get 22%, 25%. That makes the runoff. I actually went back and looked at the race in 1990. That was called the Dirty Dozen. That's when Hazel Beard ended up being the mayor. 12 people ran in that race. And in the primary, C.O. Simpkins led, one of the first major African-American candidates to ever run for office. He only had 32%. Hazel had 23% in the primary, but she went on to be the mayor. I think this race is shaping up like that 1990s race. It's not about who can get 50% this first time. It's about who can get 25%.
Everybody in the race eventually will talk about jobs and opportunity and economic development, which brings us to Cross Bayou. Is the Cross Bayou, the $1 billion 10-year Cross Bayou project on the table now? Is that something that not only Miss Ollie, but all of the candidates just would wish it would go away till after the election?
I think the answer is yes, Robert. I think every candidate in City Hall wishes that issue would at least go away till after the election. I think what you're looking at is this may become an issue with the city council races. I think the developers of that project are really trying to put pressure on the council to get 4 votes. The council knows that. They didn't like the deal in its present form. They felt the public reaction to it. So what they really did last week was punt to the mayor. They put this entirely in the mayor's court. Their vote wasn't to support or not support the issue. Their vote was to say that it's the mayor's choice to enter into the MOU. And so the mayor made it very clear, if you watch council, she's running away from the project too. She's saying, I will not spearhead this project. So right now it's a project with no champion at City Hall. And I think after the election, you'll see the development team come back and see if they can find 4 champions on the city council.
Let me ask you this, Scott. We asked Adrian, and he kind of hemmed and hawed just a smidge. What is his connection to Greg Tarver? Is there a connection? Does he have that camp behind him and supporting him?
I don't know what his formal connection would be. The rumor is that he is dating Greg Tarver's daughter, and I hate to talk about people's personal life, but that's sort of become a political issue. I do know that he grew up in the area. I do know that he has sort of been mentored by Greg over the years. Greg has taken him under his wing and kind of helped him find his way. This is a young man that did find his way to a military academy. He's at Harvard. He has interned with the governor down in Baton Rouge. And so he certainly has had some people helping him as he's grown up. And I think he and Greg have a close relationship. I'll just say that.
And you would anticipate support from the Tarver family?
Looking at the ballot, I would say yes. I think if you look at Stephen Jackson, he traditionally draws back to Cedric Glover. He interned under Glover. He worked with Cedric Glover in the legislature as an aide down there. I don't think Ollie Tyler and Greg Tarver are that close. And so if I look at the ballot, I think Adrian Perkins is where the Tarver camp will be on this election.